Greetings and thank you for watching the Linux System Administration live lessons. My name is Ben Whaley and I'm a professional Linux system administrator. I use Linux to power the cloud-based web systems for Anki, a consumer robotics and artificial intelligence company based in San Francisco. I'm the co-author of the Unix and Linux System Administration Handbook from which the contents of these video lessons are based. When I started administering Linux systems for a small computer services company in 1999, the world was only beginning to understand the deep impact that the internet would have on our daily lives. I was mesmerized by the dynamism of the consumer internet experience, and yet even more fascinated by its flexible and powerful underpinnings. Linux provided the perfect conduit for me as a tool to learn operating systems, networking, and the internet. System administration is a respected discipline needed at organizations of all shapes and sizes. In a small business, the administrator may run only a few Linux servers that coordinate the internal network. At an internet technology company, Linux is often the critical infrastructure on which the business and its products or services are built. At a hospital, Linux might run medical and clinical software, administrative systems, and research labs. In all cases, the administrator is responsible for keeping the systems running smoothly and for meeting the business's technology objectives. Administrators should be communicative, curious, and diligent. Organizations depend on administrators to be the steward of its systems, and as such, administrators should freely discuss concerns and desires about the system's environment, opportunities for improvement, and mistakes made. New tools and technologies should be carefully explored and embraced when appropriate. Administrator diligence may be the difference between a company that values the security of its customers' data and one that exposes it. The line between software development and system administration is increasingly blurry, particularly with the prevalence of programmable cloud systems. Repetitive tasks on computers, such as installing operating systems and configuring software, are nearly always avoidable through automation. Administrators shouldn't be afraid of learning how to write software to automate these manual tasks. I prefer to learn the configuration of an unfamiliar software package by first installing it manually, and then use code to automate the installation for future use. The saying in the industry is, automate or be automated. In this video series, we'll explore the fundamentals of maintaining and administering modern Linux systems. Lessons will be a mix of conceptual content followed by examples and command line demonstrations. Most of the examples are based on the CentOS distribution, a Red Hat Linux derivative used by many businesses. Each lesson will use the teachings of previous lessons to demonstrate the power and utility of the command line. I encourage you to use the Unix and Linux System Administration Handbook as a text reference to this video, and to rewind and rewatch any sections that move quickly. You'll notice that I make extensive use of shell shortcuts and tricks throughout the video. Learning these techniques will impress your friends and colleagues and improve your efficiency on the command line. This live lesson comprises 9 lessons on Linux system administration. In Lesson 1, we'll get started by understanding the basic duties of a system administrator. I'll introduce 2 tools, Vagrant and VirtualBox, that you can use to experiment with Linux. I'll also point you to additional documentation and resources for learning Linux. In the second lesson, we'll discuss the Linux shell. We'll learn how a Linux system is organized and how to use the shell to navigate the system. We'll also touch on scripting languages that can be used to automate common administrative tasks. Lesson 3 is about the startup and shutdown procedures of a Linux system. We'll cover the material at a conceptual level before we dive into the details of the Linux initialization process. In Lesson 4, we'll learn about controlling access to the system. The administrator is the go-to person for controlling who has access to what, so understanding this material will be useful. We'll cover what happens when users log into the system and how their access is controlled. In Lesson 5, I'll discuss processes, which are the running programs on the system. The Linux kernel controls the execution of programs, but the administrator influences processes through signals and kernel configuration. We'll learn how to use strace and the /proc file system to fully understand the internals of a process. In Linux, the motto is, everything is a file. In Lesson 6, we'll explore the Linux file hierarchy. We'll discuss the various types of files and their attributes, as well as controlling access to files using permissions and access control lists. Lesson 7 focuses on log files, which are the first source of information that an administrator should turn to when diagnosing a problem. We'll discuss where log files are kept and how they're collected. In Lesson 8, I'll demonstrate how to configure a Linux system for the network. We'll review both current and deprecated tools since they're both in common use. We'll also discuss how to configure DNS, the domain name service, and how to troubleshoot network problems. You should understand the basics of TCP/IP networking before viewing this lesson. Lesson 9 is about security on Linux systems. We'll discuss some of the steps an administrator should take to secure a freshly installed Linux system. We'll explore some tools for managing Linux system security, such as the Secure Shell and the iptables Linux firewall. By the end of this video series, you'll be equipped to begin administering Linux systems yourself. I hope you enjoy the videos as much as I've enjoyed putting them together.